Right, folks, time for our next debate. Keep your emails coming in. Up next, it's Emma. Emma, tell us what's caught your eye this week.
Thanks, Darren. So, unfortunately, this is not a very upbeat story. My home turf, the London Borough of Havering, the council there has firstly made the decision to cancel their Hanukkah celebrations this year, and then under pressure did a U-turn and are now going to have the Hanukkah celebrations still. And the reason why they chose to do this in the first place was because they were concerned about community tensions. Now, Havering isn't a part of London that has a particularly large Muslim population, but they were obviously concerned that allowing Jews to celebrate one of their most important holidays was going to inflame community tensions. And we've seen the police doing a similar thing during the protests over the last couple of weeks. We saw the Met police officers tearing down hostage posters because they were also concerned about community tensions. And we've seen it in the two-tier policing. We've seen it in the police focusing their attentions on the campaign against anti-Semitism, telling them to turn off their billboard campaign that was attached to the side of vans and asking them to leave the area, rather than focusing on those who were the potential aggressors and actually policing those who were shouting, calling for jihad in our streets. So I think that this really shows how fundamentally morally bankrupt we've become, because I don't think that the London Borough of Havering did this because they had any sort of malign intent. I think that they were just resonating with this cowardly zeitgeist that immediately kowtows to any imagined, not even real, imagined concerns about offending someone, particularly the Islamic community. And we're seeing this across the board. We're seeing this also at the moment in Ireland. We saw the return of some hostages this week, including Emily Hands, who is an Irish citizen, dual Israeli-Irish citizen, and Leo Varadkar referring to her as lost and then found, rather than saying that she was taken hostage by a terrorist organisation. We have a serious problem in this country, and I think that the British public can see how morally perverse this is. I am sick of this. I know that many people who are watching this show now, the viewers, will be looking at all of this and are frankly sick of it and have had enough. And frankly, I think we really need to put our foot down, because this is going to become a real problem for us if we don't do something about it now.
I assume, Benjamin Butterworth, are you going to tell Emma Webb that she's some kind of swivel-eyed bigot for thinking that this is a step too far?
On pretty much every other topic, I would, because, you know, Emma, you are. But, actually, you know, there's clearly a very good point here, which is one of the things the council said when they talked about why they weren't going to do this public celebration of Hanukkah was that they were worried about violence. And I couldn't help but think, violence from who? I don't think the Jewish people were going to go out, or the, you know, maybe Israelis that might live in that part of the world. They weren't going to go out and fight and scream and shout. We've not seen that in the last 6 or 7 weeks, have we? And it would be the people who are anti-Semites that they were worried about being violent and aggressive and expressing.
They were concerned about offending anti-Semites.
And so the idea that you don't do an event representing a part of that community because you think the bigots might get loud and vocal is an appalling reflection on that council's judgment.
You know you've made a mistake when you and I agree with each other.
Well, but do you both agree then that actually this would not happen for any other religion, that it is actually isolated to the Jews?
Well, actually, if you look at the way that people have been responding and downplaying what has happened to Israeli citizens, particularly with the rape of Israeli women, it's like #BelieveAllWomen, except when they're Jews. They are unwilling to accept the most basic evidence put before their eyes. And it shows that this is anti-Semitism. This is the old hatred coming back to haunt us. And it is so morally perverse that people would kowtow to it. Because you're right, Benjamin, they are worried about offending anti-Semites.
And you have to think about the numbers here. Look, first of all, far from everyone on those marches for Palestine is an anti-Semite. There are plenty of reasonable people, of course there are. But for proportion, there were 300,000 people on the last march, which is more than the entire Jewish population of Britain. And that's what happens. They are so loud and so vocal that the Jewish people are not getting a chance to have their truth heard. And that's when you get councils that are pathetic enough to ban a celebration of a Jewish festival because they're intimidated.
And when you look at the Black Lives Matter protests as well, nobody is out in the streets holding up photographs of Kafir Bibas, who's the 10-month-old baby who has been murdered by Hamas, along with his 4-year-old brother and his mother. When we saw people marching in the streets saying, say his name about George Floyd, people are not doing that for Kafir, and it's because he's a Jewish baby.
Yeah, people are just so selective about what kind of violence they care about. It's almost as if people have completely forgotten and just brushed under the carpet what happened on October 7th. They're only interested in what's happening in Gaza at the moment. But, going back to what the council have done, I think it's a really dangerous, slippery slope that we're going down now. If rather than punishing the people who cause violence and are anti-Semitic, we punish the Jews. We punish the people who, just because you're not liked and you're the one provoking violence, you're the one that should be punished. I mean, that's completely insane.
I mean, Elliot, how would you feel, in looking at the state of London now?
It's incredibly concerning, and I think it's a potentially inevitable result of multiculturalism, where you don't emphasise the need to cohere around a single set of values and a single idea, and instead you end up breaking off into cantons, and that always generates hate, that always generates conflict, and I think it's a big problem that has been evolving for many years.
Yeah, we've got a real problem, but I think actually finally we're starting to have a conversation about it. That's the one good thing I would say.
But also, you see so many sort of indicative gestures that happen here. So, for example, you saw a university team refuse to play the Jewish Society in a sports match. A friend of mine who is Jewish, he sent me text messages of one of his relatives who's obviously also Jewish, and their business, they'd taken the business they were going to give her away because they found out she was Jewish. Wow. And they meant that as a reflection on what's going on in Israel and Gaza. Well, I tell you what, to all those people, it achieves nothing. First of all, that's often just racism. But if you care so much, perfectly reasonably, about the plight of the Palestinian people as well as the plight of Israelis, actions like that in Britain are not going to do anything. Netanyahu or any of the leaders of Hamas are not sat there thinking, I can't believe Janet in Peterborough did that. They don't care about you. They don't even care about their own people in the case of Hamas.
It's a good point, and I don't say that often, but